Welcome to a build guide and hero showcase on the limited cultist esotericist mage, Anora. As you can see right there underneath me, I just finished a 121 run with her as a complete and utter solo DPS. Pretty remarkable stuff. I will showcase that run at the end of this video, but the first half of the video, I want to very briefly go over her kit, but I figure a lot of you guys know that by now, or you can check out my other videos. I really want to dive deep on what is now the optimal way to build her. This is something I've been working on the past few days. Me and War Guides had a big discussion about it. I think finally it's pretty clear what the optimal endgame way to build her is, but don't worry if you're not at that point yet. I will talk about as we go through and build her from scratch live, how you specifically can be building her for your account, depending on what stage you're at. But here you go. This is 121 with Power of Dominance off. No anti-heal. You know, she obviously can't receive Rage Regen. The Rage Regen was just for Mari and Greed. Just epics, and then we've got Elowen here, like I said, to help those two. Morgan as a Lord. Pretty remarkable stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it, and let's go right into her kit and her build. You can see Power of Dominance was off. We'll return to that later on. I will also tell you, when I made my Anora video a couple days ago, I said, what content do you want to see her in? And by far the most requested was Gear Raid 1 and Gear Raid 4, aka Gear Dungeon 1. And for Gear Dungeon 1, I don't think she cycles fast enough. If you use anti-heal, she certainly works, but at that point, I feel like if you have good enough gear, any good AoE mage works. If you still want to see that, I could do a Gear Dungeon 1 showcase, but at that point, it's leaning heavily on someone like an Artemis or a Demi, so I think it takes away from the strategy. You're not going to be able to blast through it as you would with a Virna, for example. Anyway, here is Anora. She's got the Tushy to save the realm, and then she's got two realms here. All right, enough about the design. Let's talk about the kit very briefly. Anora obviously is a summoner. She's got Labor over here, who a couple people in the comment section of a recent video for me let me know Labor is called Labor. This is a dragon that she summons because he was a labor of love. Whether that's true or not, I'm choosing to believe it, even though it is kind of disturbing. Seems like Anora and Ymeret, who she shares a bond skill with, which we will talk about in pretty deep detail today, they created Labor. Mamma mia. The hero in Labor permanently gains something called Sanctity. So this is a benefit and a detriment to Anora's kit. Her and her summon, who does a ton of her damage, they are immune to buffs and debuffs. It says most. It's any typical buff, any typical debuff. So, you know, nice. They can't be frozen, can't get like decrease effects, but also can't be boosted by things like an invigoration set, like from an ally, or an inspiration hero, like a Dolores. You saw in that run, there was no Dolores or Diao-Chan or Beelzebub. None of that was needed. Upon the death of an allied summon, Labor gains 1 stack of Ancient Spirit. This was recently buffed. Previously, you would gain 15 stacks, and each one was worth 1%. Now you can stack up a lot faster because you only need 6, and each one is worth 3%. So it goes up to 18% as opposed to 15, and you get to the higher number very quickly. Her basic attacks here, she hits up to 5 enemies in range. During her ultimate, the range expands. It's pretty crazy. You can see here, it's like Comet at A3, for example, that kind of range. It's this Vortex hollow range, but on a DPS. This is pretty nice basic. She's attacking along with Labor. You can see whenever she attacks, Labor is going to attack and hit up to 8 enemies. So she's hitting 5 with her basic. Labor is hitting 8. And he is going to do 90% AoE magic damage. Now probably is as good a time as ever to discuss her bond skill. So Anora is a great hero. If you get Ymeret, who I do have, we're here on my main account, so everything you see will be her featured with her bond skill. If you get Ymeret, she gives him a bond skill, but most importantly, he gives Anora a bond skill. And this bond skill is pretty crazy. So it levels up Labor, her little labor of love, her summon, into Labor Ice. Now, still inherits 100% of Anora's attributes, but additionally, there's increased damage dealt to crowd-controlled units, which makes her perfect for a cultist comp. She's also still good as an esotericist, but perfect as a cultist. Each attack, instead of dealing 90% AoE damage, as you can see here from Labor, is now bumped up to 110%. That's pretty mighty. That's like an 18% boost or something like that. It's pretty significant. And moreover, every time there's a hit, there's a 30% chance to inflict Winter's Bite. So Winter's Bite is a very pesky RNG crowd control effect. And when you get 3 stacks of it, it's a full freeze. It's pretty nasty, and this makes her a great crowd control hero in her own right, and effectively enables the boosted damage herself from Labor Ice's increased damage to controlled enemies. This effect right here. Let me actually put myself to the bottom so you guys can see a little bit better. There you are. But yeah, any stack of Winter's Bite counts as this. Obviously, any slows or freezes, stuns, anything from another allied unit will help as well. But if you get a good amount of crowd control out, which I think you will in a cultist comp, you will be cooking. So Labor Ice, phenomenal. So getting that bond skill, it takes her from great to fantastic. If we go to the ultimate now, it has that expanded range. There's a singular burst, as you'll see right there, where he flies over and does a big burst, and then it continues. That burst takes about 3 seconds. It continues for like 17 seconds with these increased abilities. So increased AoE damage from Labor. Anora remains the same, but she can keep basic attacking during the duration. And that's the initial blast here, and then increased damage straight up. And it's very, very good. And you got that big range. Nice stuff. The first passive here, she's got something called Noxious Breath. This is a damage over time effect. It's magic damage per second AoE, so it's like an AoE burn. Half damage goes to airborne units. It can hit up to 8 enemies in range. There's always a 20% chance to generate this when Labor does a basic attack or when Labor Ice does a basic attack. Keep in mind, Labor or Labor Ice are inheriting 100% of Anora's stats. So when that happens, they're also inheriting Anora's attack speed. So attack speed's pretty valuable on her because you're getting more opportunities to trigger Noxious Breath, which is a lot of extra excellent damage. And then obviously when you ult, Noxious Breath will be triggered instantaneously. This thing lasts 10 seconds too, so it's like a really significant, one of the strongest damage over time effects in the game. If we go to this second passive here, Agitation, when she's on her battlefield, inherently Labor has his attack increased by 15%, or Labor Ice, so her summon is getting 100% of her attributes, then is deployed, then gets 15% more attack. And finally, here's a little support ability, but also helps herself ability from Anora, because this does apply to Labor or Labor Ice as well, but she gives damage increase 10% to all allied summons, right? So that could be her own summon, Labor, or like maybe you're running Sun Wukong, you know, something great like that. Beatrix, who is God tier now, right? Really, really nice synergies there. There you have it. For Awakenings, I'll go really fast. I have her Awaken 1 if I want her. Actually, it's here over here in my summons. I'm choosing not to do that for the video because I want to showcase her. Oh my God, so many things to click out of. Oh my God. I want to showcase her at the base ability, but you can see we have our extra copy of Anora there. But I think most people probably have her A0, so that's the most realistic. So yeah, if we go back, the A1 is nice. I do like it. When Noxious Breath, that's the big AoE damage over time effect, is generated, immediately will inflict immobilized state. This is 2 seconds of basically a 0% movement. It's a full slow. It's essentially a stun. They just stop in their tracks for 2 seconds. Up to 8 enemies. That's a big AoE stun, effectively. The A2 plus 300 attack is nice. The A3 is just amazing, right? So Labor, who does most of her damage, is going to shred 20% of the magic defense of the enemies, so ignoring 20% magic resistance. That is like what her attack is dealing with in the computation to determine her DPS. So it's just lower magic defenses for everyone. Phenomenal. The A4 penetration, ignoring another 8% of the magic resistance here since she's a magic damage dealer. And then A5, enemies on tiles affected by Noxious Breath, her big AoE effect, received increased damage from both Anora and Labor. That's obviously phenomenal. To me, the A3 breaks things open, but a lot of people won't have her A3. And certainly if you got her A5, just amazing. So the place Anora shines the most, let's take all the gear off so we can build her from scratch. I would say the place she, number one, shines the brightest is Guild Wars defense. There's enough RNG in here, especially if you have her bond skill and a ton of DPS. She's just really, really difficult to go up against. It synergizes really well in a lot of different comps, both Esotericist and Cultist. She can work alongside Ymerit or without him. It's just great. On top of that, she's just an excellent AoE DPS and has some pretty good damage over time effects as well. So anywhere you need AoE DPS, that's really good. It's not the most in-demand thing in the game, especially when you're in the late and end game, but she does do it incredibly well, and I think you'll be blown away by it when you see her in Gear Raid 121. We'll have the POD off, Power of Dominance off, and she will melt absolutely everything. So how do you build her? Well, you have to start considering a couple things. First off, this Sanctity thing is really weird, right? She cannot get Rage Regen from Eloin or Hollow or Laurel. She is immune to that, right? These really positive things. She cannot get an Inspiration buff from a Dolores or a Beelzebub or a Diao-Chan or a Constance. She cannot get an Invigoration set buff plus 10% or a Wings of Grace buff plus 12% attack placed upon her by an allied unit in that set. So it is paramount you stack her attack to the moon. You'll see for a magic DPS, an AoE unit, she has very high base attack at 4,855. That is really high. Typical of what we see. Let's just pick out some cultists and esotericists mages here. We got Boreas, he's also quite high, but then Virna's at 46, Comet's at 48, but this is actually my A5 Comet, so he actually starts lower because he gets this boost here at his A2, plus 5%, so he's actually at about 4,600. If we go to Seraphina here, she's at 45. Beatrix as a summoner, a lot of summoners are low. She's down at 4,000. Same with Zarus, he's down at 4,300. So, and that actually, 4,300, that's with his A2. So effectively, he's down at 4,000 with Beatrix as well. So very, very high base attack, but you're not getting any other additional attack. You're not getting inspiration, you're not getting invigoration. So it's pretty important that you put a ton of attack on her. I would say for the vast majority of people, it doesn't matter where you are in the game, the most important thing to do when building her is on the right side, go attack bonus main stat on everything. And frankly, if you can do it, you want obviously your DPS stats, you want attack speed, because Labor is going to get her attack speed as well, her summon, and then you want flat attack. These are like your perfect substats for her, so you'll want those pieces. She does not get the full effect of nearly any set in the game. There's a couple exceptions we will talk about. There's one main one that I'll shout out for beginner builds, but essentially everything comes with a caveat, right? So even when we talk about these late game sets, because of the way these summoning mechanisms in this game work, when you summon a unit, the unit gets whatever boost the summoner is wearing upon them at the moment of summoning. This is not a big deal for other units in this game. You can go watch my video with War Guides where we broke this whole thing down, because other units are continually summoning, right? Someone like Sun Wukong, he's summoning his Sage clones. They can die, or after 20 seconds, they disappear, and he resummons. So every time he resummons, he's locking in his current damage boosts, attack boosts, stuff like that. However, Anora has one singular summon at the start of the battle, Labor. Labor can never die, Labor never goes away, Labor is never resummoned. So Labor's stats are locked in, and Labor's boosts are locked in to whatever Anora has at the start of the battle. So because of this, something like Soulbound Arcana is not so perfect. It can work, and I'll explain why, but it's not the greatest thing, because as you get these 5 stacks, her summon will never get a single stack of this. It will apply to Anora, however, at the moment of her deploy and the moment of Labor getting summoned, there will have been no ults cast, right? So he'll get no stack. So Labor will get none of this effect, and Labor does do the majority of her damage, so this isn't that effective, right? It's not bad at all because it makes Anora a lot stronger, but because of that, it's not so perfect. Infernal Roar is an instantaneous on-deployment boost. All basic attacks get plus 40%. And as we'll discuss in this video, spoiler alert, that is the best set in the game for her, and that is how we're going to build her in our endgame build. However, because the big blast from Labor, this 360% AoE magic damage, that is not a basic attack, you are going to lose out a little bit there compared to some other sets. That being said, the subsequent, 17, 18 seconds after that blast, you see here where Labor just hangs out and just keeps hitting and has the increased damage and everything, those count as basic attacks. So you actually see a very, very big jump. And then obviously outside of the ultimate, everything Anora and Labor are doing with their normal hits are counting as basic attacks. So it is a really good set. We get something like Ageless Wrath, which was the old conventional wisdom for her best set. On deployment, you get plus 30% crit damage, so that's great. Anora and Labor both get that. However, all these subsequent crits after deployment that lead to another 1% additional crit damage stacking 30 times, that will not apply to Labor. That will only apply to Anora, because Labor's already been summoned. Then the next 30 critical hits happen, and you get the extra 30% critical damage. So when you wear the Ageless Wrath set, Labor gets a 30% crit damage boost on deployment. Anora gets 60 later on in the battle once she gets the crits. Labor only gets half the effect. Now here's that early game thing I was talking about. A lot of people talk to me about Fracture. Fracture says increases crit damage by 45% when HP is above 70%. This is hard locked in for Labor. Permanent 45% crit damage boost, because at the time of deployment, Anora obviously has her HP above 70%, and then there's no further adjustment because Labor's locked into that. So when you deploy, Anora's can toggle back and forth depending on her health, but Labor will always get 45% increased crit damage. That seems amazing, and it's pretty good. However, it is worth mentioning as you get deeper in the game, these tier 1 sets, the ones that aren't red and gold, these tier 1 sets like Fracture, their main stat is lower than the tier 2 sets and the tier 3 sets. Tier 2 sets and tier 3 sets have 10% higher main stats. So as you can see here, 60% on a plus 16 fracture actually goes up to 66% on a plus 16 Soulbound Arcana piece. So for that reason, when you get later in, it's just better to use tier 2 gear. Frankly, it'd be better to use 3 pieces of tier 2 or tier 3 gear with good stats that are broken set than to run a fracture set. Unless your fracture set had just the most amazing secondary attribute substat rolls, it's just not going to be a thing later on. But early, it is a great choice, especially if you have a bunch of it, right? But in general, I would say by a pretty significant margin, in my opinion, Infernal Roar is the best for Anora, and that's how we're going to build her here. But then Soulbound Arcana absolutely does work because that will give the biggest boost to Anora the hero, though it's not going to give a boost to Labor. So that's a trade-off. But Labor does so much damage, it's important to really lean into that. So how would you build her early game? Early game, triple attack bonus on the right side. Do not care at all. We don't care at all about sets. You know, there are some great tier 1 sets like the Wisdom, like what's a good one? We've got Night Terror. All of these boosts are applied after deployment. After using the ult, increases damage 35%. Labor will get none of that. Increases damage by 25% for 3 seconds after making a crit. That's after deployment. Labor will get none of that. So at that point, when you're early mid game, go for stats. Don't go for sets. If you happen to have a good fracture set, like we said, that would be a really nice choice. In theory, Insight can help. It will give you a little crit rate to make the build easier, and you'll get a little bit of this extra damage, this true damage equal to the level, right? So a little 600 extra damage. It's not much, but the crit rate can help. But in general, for most people, don't worry about sets. Just go for broken set stuff and get good stats, especially once you start getting tier 2 pieces and you can just get those increased main stats, right? That is important. 72% as opposed to 66 on the crit damage, but most important for Anora, since we want to build her triple attack bonus, you want that 66% main stat attack bonus instead of the 60. Think about it. If you get a fracture set and you get 45% more crit damage, that is far worse than the extra 6% on each piece you'll get from the main stat for attack bonus. That's a total of 18% extra attack bonus from that 6%, 6%, 6% extra by going tier 2 and tier 3 gear, even if you're broken set. That is really important. For the left side, yes, you can run Annihilating Might. Yes, you can run Wicked Vengeance, you know, if you have some tier 3 stuff. But in general, you want to get that attack as high as possible. That is how Anora will scale the best, especially, like I said, because she cannot get any attack boosts from alternative sources, like an Inspiration hero, like an Invigoration hero wearing the Invigoration set, or Wings of Grace for the improved example. So you really want to go at the beginning, Calamity, and then once you have it, Warlord. Without further ado, I think you understand everything now. We got to get her attack to the moon. The final thing to discuss, because she cannot get rage regen from an Elwyn, from a Laurel, from a Leia, from a Hollow, she can only get rage regen from her artifact, which we'll discuss at the end of this, or she can get it from building rage regen percentage on her and having that scale offer for attack. It can be nice to think of rage regen as a substat when you look for her gear. It's a bonus. It is not a must. Never sacrifice attack for rage regen percentage. There's not going to be content where her ult is like just missing, right? Or almost, I can't really imagine any content. So once you're hitting the attack you want, if there's a piece where it's either like flat defense or rage regen percentage, obviously you take the rage regen percentage. That will be like the next valuable thing. But first and foremost, you want her attack to the moon, then you want her crit capped with some crit damage, then you can think about attack speed, and after that you think about rage regen percentage. So let's build her. I'm obviously going to do an end game build here, so we're going to go for that Infernal Roar set. But like I said, up to a pretty deep point in the game, do not be afraid to just take your random tier 2 and tier 3 gear and build her in a broken set for the right side. But for Infernal Roar, it's going to be simple. We want attack bonus for the main stat on all of these pieces. We want crit damage, and we want flat attack for sure. And obviously, we're looking for some crit rate and attack speed as well. So this piece, pretty solid, not special, but definitely solid. This piece, quite good. Let's check this one in comparison. Quite better. We'll definitely take that. We keep looking. So I've got nothing here with that combination. So at that point, let's throw some attack speed, crit rate. Can we get a little rage regen? No, unfortunately not. Yeah, so we'll build like this. Let's see. What do we got here? We want to have crit damage as the priority. We've got it. Let's take some peeks. Yeah, let's take this piece from Valkyra over here. So already, look, just from the right side, by going triple attack bonus, obviously my gear is good. and snagging 2 of the pieces with some flat attack. Not even great rolls, but decent flat attack. Without left side, we've already got her to 16,521. That'd be a good amount of attack already for Virna, right? So that's our starting point. Now we'll go here to our Warlord. Most important thing, we're going for an endgame build. We want like perfect substats on the breastplate. So that is our trifecta of attack bonus, crit rate, crit damage, and then flat attack. Let's make attack bonus the most important stat. Let's have that as priority 1. And let's see, we've got this piece over here on Idril. Looks pretty dang good to me. So now before we've even used our weapon, we're at over 18,000 flat attack. And now you understand the drill here. Let's check our attack speed first. We're already at 291, and we're going to get an additional 30 attack speed from her when we get the set bonus from Warlord. So I'm not dying to get more attack. I don't have any with the perfect quad. First thing I'll look for is attack bonus, crit rate, crit damage. Then I'll compare what the attack bonus stat is on that when I look at my best piece with attack bonus, crit rate, attack speed. So let's see here. We got this piece on Wukong with 28.5%. Let's throw that on, and let's do a quick little comparison here. We got this piece on Twin Fiend. So I'll be losing 31.5% crit damage. I want to be close to 300% for this build. The 72 attack speed is great, but I think we'll be fine without it. Let's leave that piece from Wukong, and we're left with a really nice Anora build. Before I show total stats, let's talk about artifact. By a mile, the best non-exclusive artifact for her, no surprise, is Tear of Twilight. But actually, Tear of Twilight is more powerful on Anora than it is on any other hero in the game. So why is that? Well, remember, the effect given to Labor is locked in at deployment. Tear of Twilight is a 30% attack increase when deployed. If HP drops below 80%, that's cut in half to 15%. These are obviously at max values, right? I've got this maxed out at plus 25. However, Labor's stats get locked in at deployment, so he's forever locked into the 30% increase. Even if Anora's at 79% or 1% health, it won't matter. Labor will stay there at 30%, so he is hard locked in. Anora will waffle if her HP drops, but actually, as you can see, if you don't have her exclusive artifact, this is just amazing. It really is. And actually, I think for this example, I'll run her in that. I do have to quickly talk about her exclusive artifact here, though. It is phenomenal because, like we talked about, it's really hard for Anora to build Rage, especially if you go for an all-out attack build and you get 0% Rage regen. Don't be too freaked out because obviously you'll get some Rage regen percentage from your Pantheon, so there'll be some benefit. And especially if you run her as an Esotericist and you run her with a Lord, the ult cost will be cut from 800 down a decent chunk, right? If you run her with a Legendary Lord, it'll be cut down to 600 costs. Obviously a bit more if you run her with Raiden. But yeah, you've got your Pantheon, so you're in pretty decent shape. Don't worry too much about that. If it's maxed out, you get 40% Rage regen percentage. Obviously, you'll get less if it's not maxed, but you'll have something. It will go a decent way. However, the exclusive artifact is so important because it's one of the only reliable ways to get her Rage, right? It increases her attack. After she ults, it permanently increases Labor's damage, and this does apply. We don't know why. We don't know how they coded that differently than everything else, but you can see it. Each ult, Labor's damage does go up, so that is fantastic. And then finally, when she gets a kill, and actually in content we're about to see now, she's going to get a lot of kills. It's going to restore her Rage by 3%. This can trigger one time every 5 seconds. It's a nice little boost. So if you've got it, especially if she's your main DPS, this is going to be her best in slot for most content. Once you have this between promo 3 and promo 4, so plus 19, plus 22, whatever it is, but 3 or 4 of these yellow diamonds, it's definitively, I think, for all content going to be her best in slot. But up until then, Tear Twilight's still awesome, and for sheer just attack to the moon, it's going to be her best. But those damage boosts to Labor are pretty significant with the already very solid attack boost. It goes up to 25%, obviously, which is really good. I will have mine maxed out by the end of this event, but I assume most of you guys won't. So let's show her off in the more accessible, though sometimes hard to come by, Tear of Twilight. Whether you've got this at 0 promotion or 5 promotion, it will be great. So all in all, that is our Anora build. I hope I gave enough tips for how you can build her as you progress to a build like this, but you can see pretty dang nice. Let's go here. We've got her attack up to 22,019. The HP is respectable as well at over 20k. That's a good number to shoot for. You can see here she's got a typical slow AoE mage attack control of 3.5 base, but we cut 1.4 seconds off of it to 2.1 seconds. pretty good. You know, certain builds you might want her a bit faster, get this down to 1.9 or even 1.8, but this will be completely acceptable. She's got a lot of extra crit here, but she's crit capped. That's what matters. Close to 300% crit damage is good. The rest is unchanged. This is going to be a pretty good Anora build. Not too much more to show you. No one's in anything that interesting. I've got my Greed in a non-DPS spammer build. Very fast, lots of rage regen. Same exact story for Mari. She's in a Mana Spring. Very fast, lots of rage regen. We've got Eloin to heal Mari. And we have got Hollow to heal Anora and Greed. Hollow and Eloin will provide no rage regen to Anora. We could do this without them. We could bring like an Aelin and a Pharisee or a Midon and a Vortex or something. But it's nice to bring them because they will allow Mari and Greed, especially Greed, to get a lot more ults off. So without further ado, let's head into battle. We're only going to deploy these 5 units. Let's make some magic happen, baby. Let me move myself up so I'm not in the way. We can deploy Anora right here. Throw it on 2x, and we're already off to the races. This obviously takes a crazy build to pull off, as you're going to see, but it's really an easy strat. So I'm only going to deploy 5 units. You could do exactly what I'm doing and bring 2 or 3 more DPS, and you will do this in your sleep, right? We're using no anti-heal, we're using no inspiration heroes, and Anora's getting no rage regen boosts, but we're still going to make it all work. Let's place Greed there, and keep it on 2x. Key thing with Anora when you use her ult, remember, when you immediately trigger it on that first activation, you get that AoE blast to up to 10 enemies from labor. Make sure you've got a nice amount of enemies in range when you trigger that. Like, I could trigger that now, but I'd only be hitting 2 or 3, even with this expanded range, something like that. I guess it'd be 4 or 5 now as they move. But I can wait and I'll hit a full 10 if I wait just an extra second. Let's get Mari there for vulnerabilities. I'm gonna wait till these guys turn this corner. All right, boom, let's ult, and look at that big blast. Let's see, 570 something, and now look at all these hits. It's just unbelievable, unbelievable. Let's get Eloin there, already getting global rage regen for Mari and Greed, and heals for Mari. You see, she took that out like it was nothing. POD is off. It would be right next to my head. It is off. Obviously, this is kind of a god tier build, at least for most accounts. Some people will definitely have better, but it just shows you don't need this. She's doing a full solo DPS. No reason to do that. We're already done. We don't need to deploy anyone else. Let's trigger Hollow here to keep some heals up. You can put a healer there. Wood Elf for Mari. Not that we really need it, but, you know, just in case. I'm going to wait till these guys start marching down. All right, let's trigger Anora now. And let's get a freeze with Mari to get a couple of them stuck away from the wall. So here comes the heals, which are annoying, but you can see we already killed a ton. Now Anora can focus on these remaining guys. Let's trigger Hollow again. And just look at this. Even without the ult, look how hard Labor's hitting. Those bigger numbers, those 144s, that is Labor. Just amazing. Only one guy remains, and he's not even at the wall right now. He's slowed too much. Let's wait till these guys turn the corner. Then we'll use a Mari slow. Let's slow with Mari right there. As soon as we can, we're going to ult with Anora. And look, they've barely taken a chunk out of the wall. This is a pure solo DPS, guys. Let's ult with Hollow there. And you can see Labor's already hitting these guys by the boss because, like, he's got the huge range, right? He goes over there and then he can hit anyone in, like, that radius around him. Let's wait on Mari. Right when these guys turn down, let's get them stuck away from the wall. So you see they're frozen here so they can't hit it. So we keep the wall health high. Let's trigger with Eloin and let's put the Wood Elf here just to be safe so Greed and Anora don't die. As soon as these guys are moving and unfrozen, we're going to ult with Anora again. We're up to 37 kills already. Hopefully we get a couple kills here before the heals. Can we get this to like 40 kills? That would be great. 39, 40, 41. Come on. Still over half health. Looking pretty good. Let's get some heals. Up to 43. So let's get a freeze here so they can't attack while they're getting healed. And as soon as this heal ends, we're going to ult with Anora. Perfect. We should take out a ton of guys right now. A ton. I'm thinking we're going to get to like maybe 53, I hope. We get, yeah, 53, 54, 55. Come on, baby. Look at this, man. This is a pure solo DPS. Let's get a freeze here. And look at that. We're at a quarter health on the wall. Just amazing. I'll tell you, she can solo this, especially if you bring a tank. Like, you could put a Solda here or bring a Broke here. Or Malvira is amazing if you've got her for this. Then the build on Anora, you can get away with a lot less. So she can kind of solo DPS it with a lesser build, but obviously I want to show her at max potential here. Nothing left to do now except for wait this thing out. Keep triggering. We're just going to chip away here. You'll see when you see these snowflakes, that's her getting the Winter's Bite stacks and then the freezes on. That when you saw that flame thing, that was the Noxious Breath. You can see that here, 20% per second. Yeah, now we just whack away at this. We can throw on auto ults at this point. We are good to go, guys. So that is going to be Anora. I really hope that helps you build her. I apologize for the kind of incorrect build I shared earlier in the week, but obviously we remedied that, and thankfully a lot more people watched the update video War Guides and I made, and hopefully a lot more people watch this video, which I really do think is the proper guide for how most people should use her. This is going to be her best build for almost all content. Definitively, this will be her best build for Guild Wars. Get that attack to the moon. I will say in Guild Wars, if you can get some extra rage regen on her as well, you know, maybe you sacrifice 1 or 2 flat attack substats, pick up a rage regen percentage. That is really nice. Let's get a final check-in on those stats. 230 million damage. Then we've got Greed here with 1.3, Mari with 0.3, and that is it. So a really incredible solo DPS for Anora. Let's snag a cheeky little picture of that for the thumbnail. And there you go, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Fastidious. If you like my stuff, these guides take a while to make, so please consider subscribing to the channel, share with your mother, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.